The idea of a dysfunctional family in media has been around for a long time, especially becoming popular as a response to shows that have a perfect, functionally always in tune family. The idea of parents fighting with their kid, or the parents of one side fighting with their in-laws, are ideas that can work and have worked before. So in my search for the worst, we look at the parents and find out, is this the worst episode? Also plug in my Discord. So I probably sum up my thoughts on both season 6 and Gumball episodes that center in on the grandparents of Nicole and Richard like,
I hate it here!
okay, maybe not hate, but I don't generally have many of these episodes on my best of or favorites list. They seem to be on paper like any other episode, just with a tad bit more bickering, but I think it's deeper than that. A lot of these episodes, whether it be Granny JoJo and the Kiss or the whole saga between Granny JoJo and Louie, it seems very slow and full of constant arguments. The entire episode reeks of being a special kind of snarky, one that sets me back. This episode even tries to trick you into thinking that it's going to be a fast-paced episode with a fast-paced opener. We have Gumball, Anais, Darwin, and Richard try to get snacks and their favorite foods into a grocery cart. For what it's worth, it's actually a fun, cool little scene that shows Nicole in her prime mom mode. It feels like a great start to an episode that deals with Nicole as a mom going through the struggle she deals with on a day-to-day. However, none of that here matters directly. Neither does the conversation about her pay.
Why can't we just have one treat?
Because it's the end of the month and I work a dead-end job where I get paid peanuts. That's not a figure of speech, by the way.
Then why are we even here?
Because I asked for an advance on my next quarter, and they said yes.
The joke about her pay, not bad. It feels like a great start to an episode that deals with Nicole as an employee and going through the struggle she deals with on a day-to-day. However, none of that here matters directly. Neither does the commentary about how bad or good we have it in current year.
Well, they're from the 60s, but look, only 20 cents for the whole pallet. I guess times were easier then. If you're a man and not a minority and were comfortable with the constant threat of nuclear annihilation. How things have changed, huh? Yeah.
You know what? I'll be the first to say it. The joke about how in certain aspects, minorities still have it pretty bad now even though they did have it bad back then is a pretty funny joke, delivered by the responses of Nicole's family. And don't you dare bring up that Rick and Morty season 4 episode. There's nuance to both of these deliveries. But anyway, it feels like a great start to an episode that deals with Nicole as a woman, going through the struggle she deals with on a day-to-day. However, wait a minute, am I reading the right line here?
Just leave it already, it's ours!
Dad? Mom?
The episode builds up a lot of different aspects of Nicole, such as the fact that she works a dead-end job to support her generally ungrateful, and in one fat rabbit's case, unproductive family, and has to be super cheap in order to feed her growing pair of children. And Richard. With that, her standards are also super high, which has been transferred over from her parents, and while she would like to pretend that she doesn't have these aspects, except in the fridge, she has shown resentment to them ever since, which has led to a lack of communication on both sides. Now, this seems pretty heavy for a Gumball episode, especially one that has her parents come back so late in the series. They were only seen before, at least in a significant way, in The Choices, an episode that displayed Nicole's parents in a very direct way. You could at least argue in The Choices, we've seen a dynamic between Nicole and Richard for a long time, whereas here it feels like the lack of a build-up beyond that episode feels like things need to be crammed into an 11-minute episode, and guess what? They do.
Come on, let's give this another chance.
Okay.
Just promise me you'll be good this time.
I can't just promise that.
Why won't you open up?
There's so much bad history between us. I mean, we stopped talking over 20 years ago.
Why are you always so hard inside?
I guess it's a way to protect myself, but you're right. I'll try my best to be open. Thank you, Richard.
Anytime?
I really do want to highlight how great this episode has been up to this point, with jokes that I feel land perfectly. It is season 6, so things have certainly toned down in many episodes. However, the humor of Gumball works great in hyperactive situations, calm situations, and everything in between. However, speaking of Gumball, the character now, not the show, him, especially in this episode, he has been cast aside to being just the ungrateful but lovable one. Full stop. He serves as the one who breaks the tension because he has no social cues to really understand what's going on. He serves as the one to make the most jokes because that's Gumball. He's the lovable one, even though it's kind of an inappropriate time. And it feels like the episode shamelessly really wants to sell this jerk with the lovable side character like it used to before. But here it makes very little sense to see Gumball so ungrateful, especially with no end goal in mind besides living up to this vague character standard. Generally, when Gumball is acting this selfish, there's a goal in mind. They keep up the jokes and the style of Gumball that I enjoy because it appeals to my humor.
The atmosphere is so thick you could cut it with a knife. What? Oh, hang on.
I said the atmosphere's so thick you could cut it with a knife.
I love it, and I'm glad to see jokes like this land well. But there's a problem, and a quite major one at that. To describe it well, I want to use one of the most unpredictable and polarizing topics to show my point: the YouTube recommendations. So a while back, I remember I got recommended something like near-death experiences but with SpongeBob music, very edgy, and I may have tapped out like a softie, not seeing some of them, closing my eyes, but imagine a SpongeBob episode that has a near-death experience. Okay, not like that, but I mean in the fashion shown in said video, where in the SpongeBob episode, people are actually near death, and it's played straight. Even in the style of SpongeBob, there are certain ideas I don't want to see. I wouldn't want to see SpongeBob's parents arguing, or SpongeBob arguing with his parents the way that it's seen here, even with the SpongeBob style jokes around it. Likewise, even though the Gumball jokes here are pretty good, I don't want to see Nicole arguing with her parents. It wasn't built up to. And as well received as the choices was, I don't believe that it was that good to warrant a saga of seeing Nicole's parents. At this point, I'd rather see more of Penny's parents, or even Darwin's parents, because at least there's something built up from before. But this kind of seems like a chore, even with the good jokes, I want to make that clear. So they decide to not be spectators to Nicole and her parents arguing and come up with an idea.
I mean, we asked Mrs. Mom, Grandpa Daniel, and Granny Mary to air their issues, and we'll decide who's in the wrong.
Or, and hear me out, or, I'm serious, hear me out, that would go horribly wrong because all three of them are stubborn, as you have built up in the story greatly, and you would essentially just be splitting up the family even more. That is actually a really dumb idea from a character that probably doesn't know any better, but it's season 6, and everyone is either an idiot, a grouch, or a snark for comedy. You see, I don't want to talk about Gumball in this light. I love Gumball. I don't want to tell you how unwatchable it can be when it brings up family, but this is such a common occurrence, I can't ignore it. I rarely see it work out well. In fact, there's another family-centric episode that made the search for the worst list as well, but we'll get to that when we get to that. So now we get a bunch of back and forth, comedic and cartoonish granted, but annoying jokes about how Nicole was pushed to an obnoxiously high standard as a child, but only because her parents loved her and wanted the best for her. Basically, Nicole is telling her own version of the fridge. You may have noticed that this episode has a lot in common structurally with the fridge, so let me give a quick recap there. So Nicole in that episode sets Gumball and the rest of the family to the standard pretty close to what her parents wanted to instill in her, with hard love and a sense to get her family to succeed, and have the drive to win like herself. I've seen a pretty mixed reception of that episode, having a lot of funny moments, and the paintball scene being pretty cool, but on the other side, I've heard that in the fridge, Nicole was extremely unlikable. So when you have this episode that has funny moments, and the grocery cart scene in the beginning, that was pretty cool, but on the whole, just seeing Nicole's parents unlikable as ever, and Nicole, I can only be consistent and not like this either. Why would I want to sit and hear them argue, even with jokes in the middle? And in hindsight, it didn't build to anything.
No offense, but we always thought she could do better than a slacker with a dead-end job who got their pants at the Army surplus store in the parachute aisle.
How dare you! My wife's behind is so small only bats can hear her toot.
I meant you.
Then the joke's on you. I don't have a job.
It gets to a climax where they share their dirty laundry, which makes them both in the wrong. I at least appreciate that both sides are doing some wrong actions here, like Nicole sending her parents retirement papers, and Nicole's parents trying to ship Richard far away. It makes it seem petty on both sides, with the underlying narrative being that both sides are doing it as revenge for the other side. But it had to start somewhere, right?
That was after...
I don't remember.
Me neither.
Then why are you still angry at each other? Why can't you just make peace?
This is so cheap, Amazon won't even sell it in bulk. Oh, so you're trying to tell me that they don't remember the origin story as to why they're fighting, and for no reason at all in this episode was it never shown this difference in life outlook has been a persistent issue? Okay, I can completely understand if you wanted to hide the origin point to make it look like both sides are being silly for letting it go if they truly loved each other. But then, don't show me Nicole literally out the womb already dealing with these issues. Don't show me Nicole growing up as a child and being put in an overwhelming amount of extracurriculars because her parents are too oblivious to understand how a child would feel about that. Don't show me Nicole growing up to be a young adult, moving out, and starting a new family with Richard. Don't show me Nicole basically confirming that her life with her parents is pretty crappy, and her parents were a big reason why. And then, after all of that, try to tell me that you don't remember where the origin story is. Because I can tell you when the origin story happens. Everybody, gather around, sit down. The origin story? It's when they put a newborn on a suit and named her Doctor. Just because Nicole and her parents don't know what happened in the convoluted mess that is their relationship doesn't mean that they don't know where the origin is. It's with her parents. And you're not gonna pull a wool over my eyes and make me believe any different. I know this episode really tried to make it seem emotional, and guess what? That's my kind of Gumball episode. If you've ever seen any other Gumball episode that I reviewed before to search for the worst. I love talking about the show. I love talking about the matchmaker. I love talking about the future. But those episodes had a meaning behind it. It had the momentum of the storyline behind it, and it made you want to see it progress. Maybe I'm in the minority here, but I'm perfectly okay with not seeing Nicole's parents ever, again, outside of the choices, I guess. If you must do it, and you really don't, give us something new. Give us something fresh, something different that we can say, okay, what now? This episode doesn't do that. It wants to wring my emotions dry with this pseudo-drama crap. But let's get to the biggest offender here. We spend the last 4 to 5 minutes of this episode with Gumball playing the emotion card with the song.
Okay, I know this is the cheapest, dirtiest kind of emotional manipulation, but there's too much on the line here, so...
Ooh, we see Nicole and her parents really do want to talk to each other, but they just keep missing the cue. I'm sorry, am I supposed to be engrossed in the story? Am I supposed to be rooting for them to get together? None of the story made sense, and there's absolutely nothing about the episode that would ever deem a rewatch. Especially with the wink to the audience that, hey, this is actually pretty cheesy and a shameless way to draw out emotion. The song is great, love the singing janker, but I can care less about what this episode represents. I think the song has a great message that if it's too hard to forgive, give with no strings. Expect nothing in return, see what happens then. However, this episode is only showing me two bitter sides that are written to accept each other at the end, when they somehow mid-argument forgot what the argument started with and tried to make it seem like its origin is non-existent. We know when this started. This is something that you cannot argue with me. We know when this started. Even if you don't think the newborn is when this all started, she was shown in school already dealing with these problems. She was shown before moving out that there was these problems. How could you tell us that the origin is non-existent or that they wouldn't remember it? This is an empty Season 6 episode amongst the other empty Season 6 episodes that really want you to tell a story and engross you into the character dynamics and relationships that may have to end now or never. But this was a miss. Also, towards the end, Gumball loops in a pretty obvious way. Gumball wanted gifts, not to reconcile her mother's friendship and make her happy. What a shocker. And that was the parents. Is this the worst episode? No. Even with all that I don't like about this episode, it's not even the worst Season 6 episode. That goes to the Inquisition, for now, if we are to assume that the show is done. However, this is a candidate for the top 10 for sure. If you have an episode that belongs in the search for the worst, let me know in the comments below. Until then, special thanks to the supporters of April. And until next time, take care. Alpha out.